Billionaire fakes a coma, but his nurse's shocking confession changes everything. The presidential suite of the private clinic was plunged into silence, broken only by the constant beeping of heart monitors. Ethan Caldwell, 42, a billionaire in the technology sector and one of the most influential CEOs among the world's largest companies, had been lying motionless for 18 days. An unexplained malfunction aboard his private jet had left him with a raw, crimson scar tracing the side of his left temple, the only visible mark of the catastrophe that had nearly taken his life. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. What no one suspected, not the neurologists, not the nurses, not even his own trusted physicians, was that Ethan had regained consciousness on the third day after the crash. He had chosen to remain perfectly still, keeping his eyes shut and his breath measured for a single, urgent purpose. He needed to find out who had tried to kill him and why. Beyond the sealed glass door of the suite, voices murmured in tense conference. "We need to reconsider our strategy, Victor," said Cassandra Caldwell, his wife of 7 years, her voice muffled but clear in the hush. "The board is losing patience. Investors are nervous. We can't stall indefinitely." "Patience, dear sister," replied Victor Caldwell, Ethan's half-brother and vice president of operations at Caldwell Dynamics. "One more week, and the board will be ready to invoke the incapacitation clause. Remember our agreement with Dr. Lauren. The medical reports are already prepared." Beneath the surface of stillness, Ethan's heart pounded. His instincts had been right all along. The jet's failure hadn't been random. It was the first move in a methodical plot to strip him of everything he'd built. And now he knew precisely who stood at the center of it. "What about his attorney, Evelyn Brooks?" Cassandra asked after a pause. "She's still demanding access to the original lab results." "She won't be a problem much longer," Victor replied, his voice chilling in its certainty. "I've arranged a meeting for her with the Bar Association's disciplinary board. Evidently, some compromising documents have surfaced in her files." Ethan's jaw twitched, so slightly that no one would have noticed, but his fury was volcanic. Evelyn Brooks had been his mentor when he was just a reckless law student, the first person to believe in his ideas and his ambition. She had stood by him when no one else did, guiding him as he transformed Caldwell Dynamics from a shaky startup into a global titan. Now, because she refused to look away, she was about to be destroyed. A soft chime signaled the door unlocking. The footsteps that entered were different from the others, lighter, unhurried, precise. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," came a clear, even voice. It wasn't the syrupy tone the other nurses used, the one dripping with forced pity. This voice was professional, steady, and unafraid. "I'm Lena. I'm your new night nurse." Ethan caught the faintest trace of lavender as she moved around the bed, checking the 4-line, adjusting the readouts on his monitors. "Your readings are stable," she continued, making a note on her tablet. "That's encouraging." There was a pause. Then the faint creak of someone lowering into the chair beside him. "I don't know if you can hear me," Lena said, her tone shifting to something quieter, more personal. "But I need to tell you something. I shouldn't be here." Ethan's breathing remained slow and even, though his curiosity sharpened to a blade's edge. "I was brought in 3 days ago to replace your previous nurse," she went on, her voice tight. "They said she resigned abruptly. But last night, when I was reviewing your file, I found something that didn't make sense." A hush settled around them, a stillness that felt loaded with consequence. "The sedation levels you're receiving are far higher than recommended for your condition," she whispered. "And there are inconsistencies in your reflex logs, entries that don't match your neurological scans." She leaned closer, her breath brushing his cheek as she spoke so softly he nearly strained to catch the words. "I'm not just a nurse, Mr. Caldwell," she confessed. "I'm a consultant in forensic neurology. I've testified in dozens of malpractice and criminal cases. I can tell you without a shred of doubt, someone is deliberately keeping you unconscious. They're trying to ensure you never wake up." A surge of vindication burned through him, mingled with dread. He had suspected sabotage, but hearing the confirmation spoken aloud by a stranger, someone with nothing to gain, made the danger feel all too real. Lena's hand hovered over his, just short of touching him. "If you can hear me, I want you to know I'm going to keep looking into this," she said, her voice unsteady for the first time. "I don't know who's behind it, but I'm not leaving you alone in this room to die by inches." Ethan concentrated on the sound of her heartbeat, fast, but steady. She was afraid, but not enough to look away. Not enough to walk out and pretend she hadn't seen the truth. "You have allies," she added, her tone fierce. "Even if you can't see us yet." She rose from the chair, the lavender scent lingering like a promise. Ethan listened to her footsteps fading across the polished floor, his mind alight with the first glimmer of hope he'd felt in 18 days. The monitors resumed their quiet rhythm. To any observer, he remained just another broken man lost inside himself. But within the fortress of his own mind, Ethan Caldwell was very much awake. And for the first time since the crash, he felt certain he would survive this. Not just survive, he would prevail. And when he did, he would remember every word spoken on the other side of the glass, every voice that had written him off, every hand that had moved against him in the dark. They believed he was defenseless. They were wrong. The hours passed in a relentless crawl. By nightfall, the polished corridors outside Ethan's suite emptied, leaving only the low hum of machinery and the occasional creak of a floorboard settling under the weight of memory. Through the glass wall, the city glowed in the distance. Hundreds of glittering windows that reminded Ethan of all he stood to lose. Lena hadn't returned since her confession that morning. For hours, he lay motionless, replaying her words over and over until they etched themselves into his thoughts. Someone is deliberately keeping you sedated. It was past midnight when the door unlocked again. The security light in the hall flickered as a figure slipped inside, moving with practiced stealth. Ethan strained to hear the cadence of the footsteps, heavier than Lena's, a touch more hesitant than Victor's. Then the man stepped closer to the bed, and the pale light revealed his face. Aaron Gale, Caldwell Dynamics' chief legal officer. A man who'd once sworn he'd never betray Ethan's trust. He wore a charcoal suit that looked slept in, his tie loosened, the skin beneath his eyes bruised by exhaustion or guilt. Ethan couldn't be sure. Aaron set a leather briefcase down on the bedside table with trembling hands. For a moment, he simply stared at Ethan's motionless face, his lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm sorry it's come to this," he whispered, voice raw. "You were the best of us. But in the end, you made too many enemies." He opened the briefcase and removed a stack of legal documents, each embossed with the corporate seal. Ethan glimpsed the words incapacitation declaration stamped across the top page in red ink. His chest tightened, though his breath remained steady. This was the weapon Victor had been waiting to wield. Aaron flipped through the pages, pausing every so often to glance at the door as though expecting someone to barge in. "You should have listened to me when I told you to delegate," Aaron continued, his voice a hoarse confession to the unresponsive man he thought couldn't hear. "You kept too much control, too many secrets. And now, they're going to take everything." A quiet beep sounded from Ethan's monitor. He forced his heart rate to settle, refusing to betray even the smallest sign of consciousness. The pen in Aaron's hand hovered above the final page. His fingers trembled. "I tried to fight them," he whispered. "God knows I tried. But your brother, he has the board in his pocket. He has Cassandra. And after tonight, he'll have the legal authority to move you wherever he wants. To keep you under until your body fails." The pen lowered, but still Aaron hesitated. His breathing turned ragged. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. I needed you to know I'm sorry." In a single, resigned motion, he signed the final page and pressed a thumbprint to the corner. The document was sealed. Ethan felt a chill seep into his bones that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Aaron closed the folder, tucked it back into the briefcase, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back one last time. His eyes shone with something dangerously close to regret. "Goodbye, Ethan." The lock clicked behind him, leaving Ethan alone once more. He lay in the darkness, listening to the machine that measured each heartbeat. His empire had slipped one step closer to the brink. But in that darkness, something else ignited, a ferocious clarity he hadn't felt since the crash. He had survived the sabotage. He would survive this too. The next day dawned gray and cold. A nurse Ethan didn't recognize came in to adjust his four. She worked in total silence, never meeting his eyes, as if she'd already decided he was beyond hope. But Ethan noted the air around her, a faint trace of disinfectant and something coppery he couldn't place. Her hands moved deftly as she replaced the sedation drip. When she left, the oppressive stillness returned. Hours later, the door opened without warning. It was Lena. She stepped inside, her face drawn, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Mr. Caldwell," she began softly, "I don't have much time. Listen carefully." Ethan willed himself to absolute stillness, though relief surged through him at the sight of her. "I found proof," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your sedation chart was altered 3 days ago. There's no medical reason for the dose you're receiving. Whoever is behind this, your brother, your wife, They're making certain you can't communicate. She reached into her uniform pocket and drew out a slim recording device. This has a time-stamped log of every adjustment to your medication, every falsified note. If we can get this to the authorities, or to someone you trust, there's still a chance. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he controlled his breathing, knowing any sign of awareness could doom them both. Lena crouched beside the bed, her hand brushing against the back of his. "I'm going to help you," she whispered. "But you have to stay strong, even if it feels impossible." A faint knock sounded from the hallway. Lena's eyes widened. She slipped the recorder beneath Ethan's pillow and smoothed the sheets as if nothing had happened. "Your vitals look good," she said aloud, her voice calm again. "I'll be back later tonight." She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, she looked over her shoulder, her gaze steady and fierce. "Hold on," her eyes seemed to say. "Don't give up." Then she was gone. For a moment, the silence seemed deeper than before, the walls pressing in. But Ethan's mind was no longer clouded by doubt. He had a lifeline now, a single piece of evidence that could unravel everything his enemies had built. He focused on the weight of the recorder beneath his pillow, as if the device itself were a promise. They believed they had broken him. But the game wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Ethan Caldwell's world shrank to the dimensions of the hospital bed. Daylight seeped through the blinds in pale stripes, tracking the hours he could neither measure nor control. But inside, his thoughts moved with cold precision. He replayed every word Lena had whispered, every confession he'd overheard. By morning, the door opened again. 2 security guards entered first, their faces blank. Behind them came Victor, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, a folder tucked under one arm. Cassandra followed, her expression composed but her eyes restless. "Let's keep this brief," Victor said. His voice was low and steady, but Ethan heard the triumph threaded through it. Cassandra stood near the foot of the bed, looking everywhere except at her husband's face. "The board has reached a decision," Victor went on. "By unanimous vote, you are to be declared legally incapacitated as of this morning." Ethan kept his body perfectly still, though fury churned beneath his ribs. "You've left us no choice," Cassandra added, her tone soft as if she expected pity. "Your recovery has not progressed. The company is adrift. For the sake of thousands of employees. For the sake of your own ambition," Ethan thought. Victor placed the folder on the bedside table. "These are the official documents. In 72 hours, control of Caldwell Dynamics transfers to the Interim Leadership Council, myself included. You will remain under medical supervision here until a long-term care facility is arranged." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied Ethan's face. "I know you can't hear me," he said, voice dropping, "but you should have trusted me years ago. You were always too proud. Too convinced you didn't need anyone." Cassandra turned away, as if unable to watch. "We'll make sure you're comfortable," she murmured. "That's all that matters now." Victor's phone buzzed. He picked it up without another word and strode out, Cassandra trailing behind him. The guards followed. As the lock clicked, Ethan's heart drummed against his ribs. They were days away from burying him alive in a private facility he'd never leave. The clock on the monitor ticked away the seconds. He knew he didn't have the luxury of waiting for rescue. That afternoon, Lena returned. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she checked the 4-line, her hand moving so steadily it would have fooled anyone watching. "They were here," she said finally. "I saw them in the hall." Ethan's eyelids fluttered, but he forced them still. "I managed to make a copy of the recorder's files," she continued in a whisper. "I emailed them to Evelyn Brooks. She'll know what to do." Hope surged through him. Evelyn was relentless. If anyone could stop Victor, it was her. "But there's a problem," Lena said, her voice tightening. "Victor has arranged for you to be transferred to a long-term unit. If they move you before Evelyn can act, they'll disappear you completely." Her gaze flicked to the door. "We don't have days," she said. "We have hours." Ethan's heart thudded once, loud in the quiet room. "I know this sounds insane," Lena whispered, her hand hovering over his. "But I can help you leave here. I know how to counteract the sedation. If you trust me, we can get you out tonight." He listened to the urgency in her voice, the resolve. She was risking everything. Lena exhaled, her decision made. "Tonight, after the shift change," she said, "I'm going to lower your sedation. If you can move, if you can walk, we'll go straight to Evelyn." She leaned closer. "If you can hear me, hold on. Just hold on a few more hours." She left before he could gather his scattered thoughts. Ethan focused on the sound of the machine at his bedside. The next time it beeped, it would be the signal that his life was no longer theirs to control. Evening came. Shadows crawled across the floor. In the hallway, staff changed shifts. A nurse he didn't recognize replaced the four-bag. For a moment, the scent of disinfectant and lavender mingled, and he knew Lena had arranged it. Minutes passed. Then he felt it, a strange clarity spreading through his limbs. The fog receded. He could feel his fingers, his toes. He flexed his right hand, so slight the movement could have been a tremor. Then again, stronger. When Lena returned, she didn't hide her relief. "It's working," she whispered. "I knew it would." He managed to tighten his fingers around hers. Her eyes shone as she met his gaze. "You're going to stand up," she said, her voice fierce. "I'll help you." She slipped an arm under his shoulders, steadying him as he sat up. Pain flared bright and hot along his ribs, but he welcomed it. It was proof he was alive. "Slowly," Lena said. "Breathe. Focus." He drew in a shaky breath. Another. Then he planted his feet on the floor. Every muscle felt like it had been carved from stone. But with Lena's support, he rose. For a moment, he wavered, vision swimming. She tightened her grip. "Look at me," she said. "You can do this." He locked eyes with her and nodded once. They moved together toward the door. Step by step, Ethan Caldwell reclaimed his life. When they reached the hall, Lena glanced both ways, then guided him forward. "If we can reach the elevator, I have a car waiting," she whispered. They crept down the corridor, the soft squeak of his hospital slippers the only sound. At the corner, Ethan paused, leaning on her shoulder to steady himself. Ahead, two security guards stood near the elevator doors. Lena's hand found his. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice no louder than a breath. He looked past the guards, into the uncertain darkness beyond. "Yes," he rasped. Then he stepped forward, leaving the prison behind. Ethan's heartbeat thundered as he and Lena stepped into the hall. Every footstep felt like it echoed across the walls. He tightened his grip on her arm, drawing strength from the steadiness in her eyes. Ahead, the two security guards shifted their weight, bored and unsuspecting. They hadn't looked up yet. Lena leaned close, her voice barely audible. "We have to get past them. I'm going to distract them, and you'll keep walking to the service stairs behind the elevators. There's a door marked emergency exit. You'll see it?" Ethan nodded, though the corridor blurred at the edges of his vision. He swallowed against the dryness in his throat. "You can do this," she whispered, squeezing his hand once before letting go. She stepped forward, smoothing her uniform, and called out in a brisk, professional tone. "Excuse me, could one of you help me? I think there's a problem with the sedation pump in room 18. Both guards turned to look at her. "That's Dr. Lauren's patient," one muttered, distracted. "You sure?" "I'm sure," she said, gesturing urgently down the hall. The second guard shifted, uncertain. "We're not supposed to leave this station." "It will take 30 seconds, Lena insisted, her tone crisp with authority. Ethan moved while their attention was fixed on her. One slow step. Another. His legs were unsteady but obeyed him. He pressed his shoulder to the wall for balance, inching past the security desk. Lena kept talking, her voice an even blend of urgency and annoyance. "If the pump fails, Dr. Lauren will blame all of us. I need help now." She turned, deliberately angling her body to block their view of Ethan as he reached the service door. His fingers fumbled with the handle. One of the guards finally sighed. "Fine. Let's go." They followed Lena down the hall. Ethan slipped inside the stairwell just as the door swung shut behind him. He sagged against the cool concrete wall, breathing hard. The stairs dropped away into darkness. His knees threatened to buckle, but he forced himself to keep moving. One step at a time. He descended 3 flights, every landing a small victory. At the bottom, he pushed through a battered metal door that led to the loading dock. The air outside hit his face sharp and cold. He tasted freedom for the first time in weeks. Parked by the alley entrance was a black sedan, headlights off. The rear passenger door opened as he approached. Evelyn Brooks stepped out. Even in the dark, he recognized her silhouette. Tall, angular, the posture of someone who had never learned to back down. "Oh my God," she breathed, her eyes wide. "Ethan." She crossed to him in 3 strides, steadying him as he nearly collapsed. "I didn't think you'd be able to walk." "Lena," he rasped. She helped me. "Get in the car. We don't have time." She guided him into the back seat, tucking a blanket around his shoulders. He sank against the upholstery, trembling with exhaustion. Evelyn slid in beside him and shut the door. "Drive," she told the man behind the wheel. The sedan glided into the street, melting into the city traffic. For the first time in weeks, Ethan allowed himself to close his eyes, not in surrender, but in relief. When he opened them, Evelyn was studying him, her expression both fierce and tender. "I received the files Lena sent," she said. "The evidence is damning. Altered medical charts. Falsified sedation logs. Your brother and Cassandra left a trail, and I intend to burn them with it." Her voice sharpened. "But you need to understand Victor is moving fast. He's already filed the paperwork declaring you permanently incapacitated. By tomorrow, it will be official." Ethan drew in a shaky breath. "Then, we have tonight." "Exactly." Evelyn leaned forward, her hand resting over his. "I've secured a safe house. No one knows about it but me. You'll stay there while I file an injunction. Once the court sees the evidence, they'll freeze the transfer of power." He met her gaze, the first spark of determination igniting inside him. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "You built Caldwell Dynamics. I'm not going to let them destroy everything you fought for." The driver turned onto a quieter street, the lights of the hospital receding behind them. Ethan looked out the window, memorizing every darkened building, every passing car. Somewhere back there, Victor would be discovering the empty bed. He imagined his brother's face, rage, disbelief, maybe even fear. Good, he thought. Let him feel fear for once. The sedan pulled up beside a nondescript brick building. Evelyn helped him out, supporting his weight as they climbed a narrow flight of stairs. At the top was a reinforced door. She unlocked it with a code and led him into a small apartment, clean, spare, the curtains already drawn tight. "This is it," she said. "Stay here. No calls. No messages. I'll be back before dawn." She guided him to a sofa and pressed a bottle of water into his hand. "Rest while you can," she said. "When I return, we take the fight public." He watched her leave, the door locking behind her. Alone, Ethan let the adrenaline ebb away. His body was a map of pain, bruised muscles, raw throat, trembling limbs, but it didn't matter. He was free, and now he had a chance to reclaim everything stolen from him. He lay back against the cushions, eyes fixed on the ceiling, and began to plan. By morning, the world would know the truth, and Victor Caldwell would realize he had underestimated his brother for the last time. Ethan lay in the quiet apartment, the ticking of a cheap wall clock marking the minutes since Evelyn had left. Every muscle ached from the effort of escaping, but the pain only fueled his determination. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about exposing the billionaire conspiracy that had nearly cost him his life. It was about ending the corporate sabotage that Victor and Cassandra had orchestrated behind polished smiles. Outside, the city was dark and silent. But in Ethan's mind, plans formed and connected in a relentless churn. Hours passed. At last, the lock clicked. The door opened a few inches before Evelyn's face appeared, wary, as if she expected to find an intruder waiting. "Ethan," she called softly. "Here," he croaked, pushing himself upright. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, her expression taut with urgency. "I've been to the courthouse," she said. "I filed the injunction to freeze the board's incapacitation order. But Victor is trying to rush an emergency vote. We need to get your statement recorded before dawn." He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion heavy, but he nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Tell your side of the story," she said. "Everything. From the plane crash to the moment you walked out of that hospital. The judge has to see this is more than a medical matter. It's a calculated family betrayal, a corporate coup." She set up her tablet, its camera lens glinting in the lamplight. "This is your moment, Ethan," she said. "Don't hold anything back." He exhaled shakily. Then he began. "I am Ethan Caldwell. 2 weeks ago, I survived an attempt on my life." He told it all, his voice growing stronger as the words spilled out, the suspense thriller of waking up paralyzed, the whispered threats, the falsified medical records, the way Victor and Cassandra had conspired to erase him. When he finished, Evelyn hit save, her jaw tight with controlled fury. "This will be enough," she said. "I'll deliver it to Judge Halden personally." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and her eyes widened. "It's Lena," she answered, voice low. "Lena, what is it?" Ethan watched her face pale as she listened. "They know," she whispered. "Already." She looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes. "They discovered the missing sedation records. They know you're gone. Victor has hired private security. They've put out a bulletin with your description." Ethan's pulse thudded. "How long do we have?" "Not long," Evelyn said. "But you're safer here than anywhere else. The building isn't in your name. They'd have to search every apartment on this block." He rubbed his temples, fatigue washing over him again. "Then we wait," he said. Evelyn sat beside him, her expression softening. "You should try to rest," she said. He leaned back, closing his eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time he drifted near it, the memory of Victor's voice jolted him awake. When dawn began to lighten the curtains, Evelyn touched his shoulder. "I have to go deliver this," she whispered. "It's the only way to stop them." He nodded. "I'll be back by noon," she said. "Stay hidden. No matter what." After she left, Ethan stood and paced the small living room. Every hour brought them closer to exposure and closer to ending this corporate power struggle. His mind returned again to Lena. She had risked everything. If Victor traced her involvement, she'd be finished. As the morning dragged on, Ethan's phone, a cheap prepaid Evelyn had left him, vibrated on the table. He snatched it up, half expecting it to be Victor's men. But the screen only read, "Unknown number." He hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Ethan." Lena's voice was quiet but urgent. "I can't talk long. They questioned me this morning. I convinced them I didn't know where you'd gone." "Thank you," he whispered, relief flooding him. "I'm worried," she said. "Victor's people are sweeping the area. If they find you first—" "I know," he interrupted. "We're almost there. Evelyn has everything." "You need to be careful," Lena insisted. "You can't underestimate them. They're desperate. Desperate people are dangerous." "I won't," Ethan promised. He heard voices in the background, muffled orders, footsteps, and then the line went dead. He stared at the phone, his mind spinning. Victor was closing in. The betrayal story that had started with a single plane crash was now consuming everything. Outside, a car engine idled. He forced himself to breathe evenly. Not every sound meant danger. But when he peered through the curtain, his stomach clenched. A black SUV sat across the street. Two men in suits waited beside it, scanning the building with practiced detachment. Private security. His hands curled into fists. They weren't going to get the satisfaction of dragging him back to that hospital. He reached for the cane Evelyn had left propped by the sofa. His body protested as he straightened, but he pushed through it. He crossed to the kitchen, scanning for anything he could use if they forced their way in. A knife. A heavy iron pan. He set them on the counter, determined not to go quietly. The clock ticked toward noon. Still no word from Evelyn. Every second stretched into hours. Finally, the door lock clicked. He turned, breath held. Evelyn stepped inside, her face flushed with victory. "It's done," she gasped. "The judge issued an emergency stay. The board can't declare you incapacitated." He sagged against the wall. "They can't touch your shares. Or the company," she said, voice shaking. "We did it." He stared at her, relief a physical force that nearly knocked him over. But she held up a hand. "This isn't finished," she warned. "Victor will try again. But now you have the advantage. You're alive, and you're legally in control." He straightened, the exhaustion receding beneath a rising resolve. "Then it's time," Ethan said, his voice hard. "Time for what?" "To end this." "For good," he replied. Because this was more than a suspense drama or a coma recovery story. It was a war. And he intended to win it. Ethan stood at the small kitchen counter, hands braced on the edge as Evelyn's words sank in. The judge's injunction was only the first strike. The war for Caldwell dynamics was about to spill into the open, and he could almost feel Victor's fury reaching for him across the city. He turned to face her. "We have to move before he does." Evelyn nodded, already tapping her phone. "I've arranged for a car. We're going to the Caldwell Dynamics headquarters. You need to show the board you're alive. You need to look them in the eyes." She glanced at his rumpled clothes, the faint tremor still in his hands. "You can't walk in looking like you just crawled out of a hostage cell." Ethan managed a tight smile. "It feels like I did." She crossed to him, her voice gentler. "There's a suit in the bedroom closet. It should fit. Change quickly. I'll update the security detail." He limped into the bedroom. The suit was charcoal gray, fresh from a tailor, the fabric smooth beneath his aching fingers. As he buttoned the jacket, he looked into the small mirror on the wall. The man staring back looked older, thinner, but his eyes were clear, no longer dulled by sedation or fear. He was ready. When he stepped out, Evelyn was waiting, her phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call with a flick of her thumb. "The driver is downstairs," she said. "No sign of Victor's people. If we move fast, we can get you in the building before they realize where you've gone." He inclined his head. "Then let's go." The sedan pulled away from the curb, gliding through the morning traffic. Every time a black SUV passed them, Ethan felt a cold thread of dread unspool in his chest. But none of them slowed. At the next light, he turned to Evelyn. What happens if Victor still tries to force the incapacitation vote? He can't, she said firmly. The court order is clear. The only way he can override it is if you disappear again. He absorbed that in silence. They turned onto Franklin Avenue, and the steel and glass tower of Caldwell Dynamics rose into view. Ethan's pulse thumped. It was still his building, his company, his legacy. But that wouldn't stop Victor from trying to take it anyway. The car pulled into the underground garage. As Evelyn helped him out, a small group of private security emerged from an unmarked van, forming a protective wall around them. "You ready?" she asked. Ethan drew a long, steadying breath. "I've been ready since the moment I woke up." They entered through a back elevator, rising straight to the top floor. When the doors opened, the executive lobby was nearly silent. Only the receptionist, her face pale as she recognized Ethan, stood behind the massive marble desk. "Mr. Caldwell," she whispered. "They said you." "I'm very much alive," Ethan interrupted. "And I'm here to see the board." "Yes, sir." She fumbled for the phone. "Don't announce me," he said, his voice colder than he'd ever heard it. "Just unlock the boardroom." Her hand shook as she pressed the security override. The frosted glass doors at the end of the hall slid open. Ethan walked forward, his cane tapping lightly on the polished floor. Evelyn kept pace beside him, her expression a mask of fierce composure. Inside, the board sat around the gleaming conference table. Victor was at the head, Cassandra to his right. Both looked up, then froze as Ethan crossed the threshold. "Good morning," he said evenly, his gaze sweeping the room. "I see you started without me." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Victor rose slowly to his feet. "This is impossible," he said, his voice flat. "You're incapacitated. You can't." "Does it look like I'm incapacitated?" Ethan countered, his voice rising just enough to fill the room. "Or are you finally ready to admit that you lied to this board, forged medical records, and tried to steal everything I built?" A ripple of unease passed through the directors. Cassandra recovered first, rising to stand beside Victor. "You have no proof," she said crisply. "Your condition is unstable. This outburst only shows." Evelyn stepped forward, a folder in her hands. "This is a sworn affidavit from Dr. Lena Valles," she said, her voice like a blade, "documenting deliberate oversedation, falsified neurological reports, and threats made to medical staff if they disclosed his true state." She tossed the folder onto the table. It landed with a sharp crack that made several directors flinch. Ethan moved to the head of the table, planting his cane in front of him. "For weeks, I lay in a hospital bed listening to the two of you plot," he said. "You thought you could break me. You thought you could erase me." His eyes locked on Victor's. "You were wrong." Victor's face had gone gray. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You've exposed this company to staggering liability," Ethan went on. "You've betrayed your family, your employees, your shareholders." He looked around the table. "As of this moment, I'm exercising my authority as CEO to suspend both of you, pending a formal investigation." Cassandra's hand shot out to grip Victor's arm, but he was already sinking back into his chair, defeated. The silence was absolute. Ethan straightened, feeling the tremor in his hands finally subside. "This board will reconvene tomorrow," he said. "In the meantime, you'll receive the full evidence package. I expect each of you to read every word." He turned to Evelyn. "Notify security. Escort them out." She nodded, her eyes bright with quiet triumph. As the guards approached, Victor finally found his voice. "You think this is over?" he hissed, his eyes wild. "You think you've won?" Ethan regarded him with a calm he didn't entirely feel. "This isn't about winning," he said. "It's about the truth. And the truth has a way of surviving even the best-laid lies." Victor was still shouting as the doors closed behind him. Ethan let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the last weeks finally lift. Beside him, Evelyn smiled. "You did it," she said softly. He nodded, though he knew it wasn't truly finished. Not yet, but for the first time in a long time, he believed it could be. Ethan sat alone in the conference room long after the board had gone. The city beyond the windows glowed with 1,000 points of light. For the first time in weeks, he let himself feel the exhaustion, the fear, the grief, but also the quiet triumph. Evelyn returned, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She set one in front of him without a word and took the seat beside him. "Victor and Cassandra have been escorted out," she said. "They didn't go quietly, but they went." He wrapped his hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into his palms. Legal will handle the rest, she continued. Criminal charges, civil liability. You don't have to be the one to prosecute them. Ethan lifted his gaze to hers. I know, he said softly, but I have to be the one to face them when it's over. Evelyn looked away, as if the raw honesty of it unsettled her. You don't owe them anything, she said. Maybe not, Ethan said, but I owe it to everyone else. To this company, to Lena, to the staff they tried to intimidate, to the people who trusted me to protect this place. He turned to look out the window, watching headlights crawl along the highway. Betrayal doesn't end with a court ruling, he went on. It ends when you prove you're stronger than the people who tried to break you. Evelyn didn't argue. She just sipped her coffee and let the quiet stretch between them. At last, she reached into her bag and drew out a slim black envelope. What's that? Ethan asked. From Lena, she said. She asked me to give it to you personally. He took it, breaking the wax seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a handwritten note. Ethan, whatever happens, remember you are the reason so many of us believe this company could be different. You're the reason I stayed when it would have been safer to leave. No matter how dark it gets, you have never been alone. Lena. He folded the note carefully, tucking it into his breast pocket. I should have thanked her in person, he murmured. You will, Evelyn said. She'll be back tomorrow. She just needed a little space. Ethan nodded, feeling a rawness in his throat he couldn't quite swallow. A quiet knock broke the moment. The door opened, and a young security officer stepped inside. Mr. Caldwell? The press is gathering in the lobby. Ethan rubbed a hand over his eyes. Of course they are, he sighed. Evelyn stood, straightening her suit jacket. You don't have to face them tonight, she said. We can issue a statement and let this settle. But Ethan was already rising. No, he said. I've hidden long enough. If I disappear now, it'll look like everything they said about me was true. He crossed the room, feeling the ache in every step, but also the certainty. Evelyn followed, her heels clicking lightly on the tile. When they reached the elevators, he paused, looking at the company seal on the wall, 2 interlocked circles, engraved with the motto, Progress through Integrity. For a long moment, he simply studied it, remembering the nights he'd sat in this building with his father, planning a future neither of them had lived to see. Then he stepped into the elevator and faced forward. The ride down felt impossibly long. Each floor they passed seemed to echo with the memories of the weeks he'd lost, sedated, imprisoned, dismissed as already dead. When the doors finally opened, the lobby was flooded with camera lights. Reporters pressed against the velvet rope, their voices clashing in a chorus of questions. Mr. Caldwell, where have you been? Is it true your brother tried to declare you incompetent? Are you stepping down as CEO? He raised a hand, and the noise died almost instantly. I have prepared a brief statement, Ethan said, his voice steady and clear. Cameras clicked. Lights flared. I was the victim of a deliberate attempt to remove me from my position and control this company, he began. What you have heard is not speculation, it is fact, supported by evidence that has already been submitted to the authorities. He scanned the crowd, letting the words sink in. I survived because of the courage of a few people who refused to let lies go unchallenged. Because of the integrity of professionals who valued the truth over their own safety. A flicker of movement caught his eye. In the back of the crowd, he saw Lena, her hair pulled back, her face pale but resolute. She met his gaze and nodded once, a silent vow that she was still with him. Ethan swallowed, feeling something loosen in his chest. Caldwell Dynamics will continue under my leadership, he continued. I will not allow this company to be defined by betrayal. We will rebuild stronger, and we will do it together. The lobby erupted in questions again, but Ethan simply stepped back, flanked by security. As the elevator doors closed, he let out a long breath. It's over, Evelyn said beside him. No, he replied quietly. It's only the beginning. Back in his office, Ethan dropped into the chair behind his desk. It felt almost surreal to sit here again, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city. You did it, Evelyn said, smiling faintly. He looked up at her, the exhaustion finally catching up to him. Not alone, he said. Never alone. The phone on the desk began to ring, a chorus of board members, journalists, and old allies he hadn't heard from in years. Ethan didn't answer it. Not yet. Instead, he leaned back and closed his eyes. For the first time since the crash, he could finally breathe. Because no matter how many times they tried to bury him, no matter how carefully they'd crafted their scheme, the truth had survived. and the truth would always survive. If you enjoyed this suspense-filled journey of resilience, betrayal, and triumph, make sure you subscribe and follow Lixin Unique Stories, where powerful narratives come alive every week. Whether you crave billionaire conspiracies, corporate power struggles, or stories of hidden strength, we bring you the tales that keep you hooked till the very last word. Thank you for watching, and remember, every story has a heartbeat. Keep listening.